Hey, Bar. So glad to have you today on the Adopted podcast.
Hi, Deepak. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Bar, you're the co-founder and CEO of Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo pioneered the concept of data observability. Now, not many of us know about the space and know about Monte Carlo. So could you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to start in the space?
Yeah, of course. Happy to share. So, this has been quite a fun journey to date. We started the company about 5 or 6 years ago with the mission of helping and enabling organizations to adopt data or use data and AI today, by increasing the quality and trust of that data. So the best way to think about this is just like there's Datadog or New Relic for engineers, we do the same things for data teams. And so if you think about it, there's data scientists, data analysts, data engineers, machine learning engineers. All of these people are building data products, data and AI products. And that can be an AI application or like a BI dashboard or an ML algorithm. In all of those instances, they're building a product that needs to be reliable, high quality, trusted. And so we help those data teams know about data issues, be able to troubleshoot them, et cetera. We are fortunate to work with some of the best data teams in the world. We work with over 400 enterprises, including companies from a variety of industries. So think like Cisco, Intuit in tech, NASDAQ, SoFi, and others in financial services, Roche, others in healthcare, many others sort of across the board in retail, media, et cetera. Really sort of any industry that's using data and AI, which industry isn't, wants to make sure that their data and AI products are reliable, and trusted. And that's where we come in. My personal journey, so my background is data analytics, studied math and stats, long time ago. And, in my experience working with organizations, we were trying to use data. This was like 5-10 years ago. And the data was wrong often. The implications of it 5 to 10 years ago were maybe minimal. Like maybe, our CEO was kind of looking at the data and, was a little bit upset that the data was wrong. And so I was upset too, that my CEO is finding out before me, at the time. And so, I was looking to our engineering counterparts and they had all these awesome solutions for making sure their applications are reliable, the concept of 5 nines, et cetera. The data and AI teams have nothing like that. And yet they are shipping and building at, same or faster rates. And so, I couldn't see a world where data and AI wouldn't matter. And I couldn't see a world where you didn't need those products to be reliable and trusted. And so it sort of became apparent that that's going to be something that's really important to the world. I was really excited for Monte Carlo and for our team to bring that vision to life over the last few years.
Very cool. I think in the world of AI where we live in right now, I was reading one of your posts too, unstructured data becomes even more important than structured data, right? And there's a lot of issues with unstructured data in general before you can expose them to AI models. So I think it's really good timing from that perspective too.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I think if you think about like the evolution of the data and AI space in like the last 10 years, the data and AI estate has changed tremendously, right? Like 10 years ago, you had like one instance of Oracle and a couple people like running some data on it. Today you have largely the entire company, entire organizations like using data. And if you think about today's world, most of the enterprises that I speak with, there isn't a single team that's adopting AI. There's often like sort of a grassroots movement where folks are kind of like, using AI solutions and building AI products across the board, mostly an experimental phase, but there isn't sort of an alignment on a standard yet. And in that sort of, realm, the cost of using data that's wrong or inaccurate is very high. And the types of data that you're using is different. So to your point, historically there was a big emphasis on structured data. That's a lot easier to manage and process. With unstructured data, there's a lot of questions of, how do we manage the reliability of it, the trust of it, the quality of it? There's a lot more of that. And so I think this, on the one hand, like there's a lot more types of data that we're working with, a lot more data that we're working with on the one hand. And then on the other hand, like the stakes are a lot higher. right? And it's a lot like, I'll just give an example of why this even matters. This is an example that I like to give. Um, I think this was a couple of quarters ago. Someone sort of Googled, what should I do if cheese is slipping off my pizza?
Mhm.
And Google responded, oh, you should just put organic super glue to put it back. And it like went viral on X.
That's advice.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Google maybe can recover from that. Like sort of from their reputation can take a hit if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You'd still sort of use Google tomorrow. Most companies in the world, think about like airline companies, banks, financial institutions, um, all these companies, they can't get away with that kind of fuck up, excuse my language, right? So yeah, like the stakes are a lot higher today.
Industries like fintech, healthcare, obviously stakes are way higher. And then if you think about AI moving from just answers to actually doing actions, that's a whole different ballgame, right? You work on intent,
Absolutely.
that action, and then the repercussions are like some of these actions are irreversible too, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, great to talk about that. I also wanted to pick your brains further on, in the AI world, data observability. Is that something that companies you stress companies should focus on before they deploy AI models, or is it something that they deploy AI models, they start learning, and they continue to observe and improve? Like how do companies need to think about data observability?
It's a great question. So I'll talk about maybe two or three different things here. I think the first thing that, I'd like to touch on, which is maybe the most critical, and I'm saying this is the most critical because this is what we're hearing from our customers. Most of our enterprise customers, actually, we did a survey. I'll share some of this. We did a survey for data and AI leaders, a couple hundred of them, and the results showed 100% of them are doing something with AI. Like literally, no one said I'm not doing AI. Every single person interviewed did I also think maybe 90 or 91% are actively have AI in production. So there's definitely progress being made, over the last few years. However, maybe the most interesting part was um, only 1 out of 3 respondents felt that their data was AI ready, meaning that they could actually use their data in order to power their AI applications. Now, let me explain for a second why that matters. I think in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion around, you know, which model is the best, right? And there's obviously, you could debate open source or closed source, right? Between like OpenAI and Anthropic, or Meta's Llama, and that there's various options. And if you recall DeepSeek Monday, as they call this, right, when DeepSeek showed up on the scene and proved to do all of that for a mere cost of $6 million, if I remember correctly, right, and sort of really sort of threw a grenade into the situation. I think that debate is important, but I think for enterprises, the thing to remember is that anyone has access to the latest and greatest model. So within a few seconds, a couple of minutes of like setting it up, I can right, like get the API key and we're off to the races, right? And so how do enterprises actually differentiate in that world? Where if you want to create a personalized experience, if I'm, creating like a concierge agent as an example, or a financial advisor agent. Like I want to know things about Deepak in order to be able to make recommendations for you. And so actually the value, my ability to personalize something or to build, an agent or an AI app that's a lot more valuable will be via that data, the enterprise data that I have, right? And if you think about an internal use case, my ability to automate a process or optimize a workflow hinges on understanding the internal data and its semantics. And so in that world, actually the value is in the enterprise data. However, if that data isn't ready, then what's the purpose of said AI app, right? And so I really think the very first thing that customers or companies are focusing on now is how do I get my AI ready, my data AI ready, and how do I actually do that? Obviously, my biased opinion is that that data and the models tend or has a tendency to go wrong. And so I think you need the whole purpose sort of end to end observability is to cover your data and AI estate and make sure that when things go wrong, you can identify those, be the first to know about it, and troubleshoot them, and identify them faster and also resolve them faster. And I can go into more detail into what we think that looks like, but that is really sort of the first pillar. Is like, get your data AI ready. I think the second thing that's important here is let's consider what are the reasons for why AI applications or your data and AI estate, why are there issues? Like, why would that be unreliable? We largely find that there are 4 core reasons for why your data and AI estate might have problems. It can be traced to 4 core pillars. The first is if you have bad data. If you ingest bad data, so let me just give you an example. Let's say, you're an airline operator and you're ingesting data about where's your luggage or, any information about passengers. If you're ingesting data and that data is null, for example, that might actually mess up your entire schedule and your flight operations as a result. And so making sure that the data is accurate is really important. The second core change that can happen is change in your code. So code can be, code that actually does transformations to the data, or code that, is the code that goes into your agent. And bad, it can be like a bad join or a schema change. All of those things can go wrong and mess up things downstream. The third thing that can go wrong is you might have a problem with the system or the infrastructure that runs the jobs. So that could be, for example, like an Airflow job that fails, or a DBT model, or DBT failure. So that's a third sort of thing that can go wrong. And then the fourth thing that can go wrong is the model response that you have might be unfit for the use case. So, you can have the perfect prompt and the perfect contents, and still the model response would be inappropriate or not fit. And so, a great example for that would be a hallucination. Just like the Google and the super glue example, right? Like, the context was fine, the prompt was fine, the response was not. And so, in order to actually have observability, or actually to have, trusted data and AI system, you have to have visibility into the data, the code, the system, and the model output. And having strong sort of end-to-end visibility includes all that. And doing that is hard. It's really hard. But I think that's sort of the next frontier. And then maybe just the last point that I'll say here is, I think AI can also further how we do data quality. So AI can actually make data quality a lot easier. And that's sort of another area of advancements that I'm really excited about, but is totally separate from how enterprises use AI.
I love the way you broke it into those 4 parts. And I think the last 2 parts become even more relevant in the world of AI. And from what I have seen, at least when you look at AI copilots and agents out there, everybody has a small disclaimer that AI could be wrong, right? This is a beta product. And obviously, they're all trying to safeguard themselves. But there's so much that even though you set up guardrails for AI, because it's non-deterministic, there are instances where AI could throw in something completely out of the bag, right? So that's why you have to monitor and improve constantly.
Totally. And, I would say, right, I totally agree with you. So, you need to get your data AI ready, but then you also need to take into consideration that there's more factors in the world of AI. And I don't think this is far from us. Like, these are things that you can see today. So it's actually interesting to watch the evolution of how, bad data has impacted companies. I think this is like early 2020s. I think this was maybe Unity, a gaming company, had a $100 million loss because of one schema change. So their stock dropped 37%. So they lost some money. Fast forward to that, I think this was last year, Citibank was hit with a $400 million fine for having bad data quality practices or lack of data quality practices. Okay, that's a lot more money, right? Or more money. If you look at the landscape today, the examples are crazy. So I remember the story, someone, which, kudos to that person, was able to convince an agent to sell them a Chevy Tahoe car for $1. Like, okay, awesome. Great they were able to do that. But the liability is on the company, right? Not on the user. And so there's actually serious revenue brand reputation and risk, regulatory risk implications in all of these examples. And so, yeah, the world for data and AI teams is it's real. These problems are not. This isn't something that is just theoretical. For anyone who's actually building with data and AI today, you have to take this into consideration.
Absolutely. And Bar, based on what you're seeing with companies, where do they struggle the most? Is it data quality, semantic meaning, or is it governance of this data? Yeah. Any
Oh
thoughts?
man. Yeah. Well, each of those by itself, you said governance, semantic meaning, data quality, each of them by itself can be, probably a whole hour of discussion. I think, maybe just to call it a couple of things, these three problems have been here for a while, right? There's been here for a long time ago, and they also mean different things for different people. I think data governance is like an umbrella term for a lot of different things. I will say what is remarkable is that what's old is new again, if that makes sense. So if in the past data quality, data governance was really important, it is now sort of 10 times more important. And I think when you look at sort of the struggles that data and AI teams have is, you know, those teams are often still the last to know about these issues. So like they would hear, they would be getting the fine, the regulatory fine in the case of a bank, or, they might be hearing from a user about, the, whatever, the pricing discount, the outrageous pricing discount for a car to be sold for $1, right? I think furthermore, data and AI teams oftentimes don't have visibility to the changes that we're making upstream. And so, an engineering team that might be building an AI app might be making some changes upstream, resulting in, data being corrupted somewhere downstream, and so I think ultimately, like, we hear a lot about those pains. And I don't think there's one sort of magic wand and you can say like, okay, we'll just fix data quality, we'll be done, or we'll just fix, data governance and we'll be done. So I think those things often go hand in hand, right? As part of kind of an overall initiative um, to kind of, modernize your data and AI platform. Um, you know, Obviously my recommendation, a lot of these things have to do with like having your stack in the cloud and working with, partners to help do this. A lot of these things can be done off the shelf today. We've gone a long, far cry from where we were 5-10 years ago that everything had to be done manually. Like if you think about data quality, for example, I still see that with AI. I was talking to, a Fortune 500 company and, I was asking them like, how do you think about the reliability of your AI responses? How do you evaluate that? And, she basically told me, oh, we have a user basically sift through 200 responses, to like go through all the details and like evaluate whether the responses are good or not. Like that's really a grueling process. And it actually reminds me of how we did data quality 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, when I would ask someone, hey, how do you make sure that this report that your CEO is looking at, they would be like, oh, we just wake up in the morning and we have 10 pairs of eyes, make sure the data is accurate. And you're like, really? Like, that's how we're making sure that the report is accurate, by having manual eyes on it? And we're seeing the exact same thing with AI again. And so, I do think that, obviously having come from data quality and data observability, I am excited about how AI can make those things easier and faster. So just as an example, it, pr- prior to AI, if there was a problem with, let's say, I mentioned that there's these 4 pillars that data can go wrong due to problems in data systems, code, or model responses. Let's say in the past there was some issue, like, someone was looking at a dashboard or an ML algorithm, or looking at the website and the pricing looked wrong, for example, for some product in a marketplace. In all of those examples, basically the analyst, in order to figure out what's wrong, has to come up with like 10 different hypotheses and start research them. Like, okay, maybe someone made a change in the code here. I remember that last week engineering did a push and like shipped something new. Let me go check that. Or, that's one hypothesis. The second hypothesis can be, well, this data really relies on data that we pull from LinkedIn or some other third party source. Let me go back and like check that. basically you have to lay out all these hypotheses and then start researching them. And that is a very grueling work. However, using LLMs is a wonderful application of how we can shortcut that amount of time. And so one thing that we've built as an example, it's called a troubleshooting agent, where basically we basically like spawn new agents or LLMs that go basically do the work of an analyst. And so per hypothesis, do that research. And the magic is that they basically look not only at the specific table where the problem was identified, table in a data warehouse or data lake, and basically do it recursively for all of the data assets and data tables upstream until they find the specific problem. So it's literally being able to bring together data systems, code, and model outputs into one place and significantly cut down on analyst time. And so, when you say like, what should analysts do? How should data teams work with data quality? We've got, there's so many advancements to how to do that even better now, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's so cool. Just understanding the whole lineage of data and then figuring out exactly where the issue was and go fixing it. Right. So that's
it's very hard to do. I'm thrilled that we can have, our troubleshooting agent can actually like spawn up to 100 different agents at the same time and still return a result in under a minute. And so you can start from, I have this data issue, and within a couple of minutes, basically see sort of the output of like, here's the main findings, here's what we think the root cause is, here's the correlated code changes, here's the pull requests that happen at the same time, here's the data that was also corrupted, here are the data trends that are happening, basically like a full summary of the issue. And that literally could have taken an analyst like, I don't know, weeks if they're lucky, if they're really good. And so I'm really excited when we can find real applications of LLMs that can actually significantly make data and AI teams better. That just makes me so happy.
Yeah. While you were explaining that, you just gave some interesting observations on like how can you build agents, right? Like you talked about multiple small agents, and then there's like an orchestrator agent kind of figuring out which agent was wrong. So yeah, I think that was pretty interesting for our audience. I do have a question about synthetic data, Bar. Do you think there's a lot of chatter about synthetic data. Do you think it really helps improve AI's output, and should companies be using synthetic data?
It's a good question. Look, I think you're not gonna, I don't know if this is a cop-out answer, but I think it depends, right? So I think there's definitely instances where synthetic data makes a lot of sense, right? Especially if you're trying to make LLMs better. And I know that the most popular LLMs, like we mentioned Anthropic, Llama, ChatGPT, they've already basically been trained on all of the internet's available tokens. And so if we want to see sort of any kind of model accuracy continue to advance, we're going to have to use a whole lot more data. And synthetic data, I think, in that regard, makes a ton of sense, right? And I think maybe there's like some point, I think someone called it like peak data, kind of reached peak data, the point at which like, we've already trained on all the data available, or we will at some point soon. However, I do think that is a limited use case. So even if we make our model, as best as possible, as best, not as humanly possible, as best as possible, that's not sufficient. As I mentioned sort of earlier, I really do believe the value of these products and the value of these solutions will be in your first and third, in your enterprise data, basically. And so, that synthetic data cannot sort of replace that. So while I think synthetic data has a potential to be tremendously useful for model training, I think over time, that's not going to be the value driver for organizations.
Awesome. Bar, we're almost at time here. So I have 3 quick rapid fire questions. I hope that's okay with you.
Of course.
So first one, applications versus AI agents. What's your take on the future?
Applications versus AI agent. Good question. I mean, look, I might challenge that. I might challenge that maybe it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not sure really. I'm not sure the interface sort of matters, if that makes sense. I think sort of the bigger question for me over time is, can said application or AI agent actually add meaningful value? can we actually like build? I think there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of agents, there's a lot of applications, but can we attribute that this agent or this application actually like there's a lot of talk about like say operational efficiency. Can we attribute that to saving, increasing teams' productivity or delivering a better product experience? And so for me, that is the big question. And I'm bullish. I'm optimistic. So, I do believe a world where, we reach AGI at some point. I think it might take, longer than we might have, than what we currently are thinking. But I think if you look at let's take a look at the internet, for example, like that was like a significant, development. It took longer than we thought, but it changed our life. And I think AI more broadly will be the same.
Yeah, probably like a 10-20 year cycle is what to expect at the bare minimum for us. So, next question is what's your favorite productivity hack?
My favorite productivity hack. So I have this saying called speed and focus, which is basically like my operating model. And I repeat that everywhere. So there's like a Slack channel called Speed and Focus. And there's, my weekly meetings are called Speed and Focus. And like every single time I meet with company, I remind them of Speed and Focus. So for me, I don't know if this is a hack, but it's sort of like a mentality to live by. Like we should do fewer things better and do them faster because our customers don't have time to wait for us.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's the concept of this podcast too. So on that note, there's one last question for you.
Sure.
What's one piece of advice for any aspiring founder in the AI space?
My biggest piece of advice is don't listen to advice. Listen to your customers, listen to your gut, listen to the data, but certainly do not listen to advice.
Awesome. All right, Barr, on that note, I want to say thank you so much for taking time. I know you have a very, very busy schedule, but this was amazing, especially educating folks on data observability and AI is something that we have not done before. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.